Alright, lesson 57, adding and subtracting fractions. This is a little bit more about what we've been doing the past two lessons, adding and subtracting fractions that do not have a common denominator. So you gotta know your multiples, gotta know your multiplication facts, and without further ado, let's go ahead and show a couple example problems. Alright, this lesson breaks adding and subtracting fractions into three steps. Step 1, shape, which basically means find a common denominator. Step 2 is operate, that means add or subtract your fractions once they have a common denominator. And step 3 is simplify. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do an example. Okay, our very first one is going to be 1/2 times 2/3. And you know that halves and thirds can't be added together because they do not have common denominators. They have different numbers in the denominator. So we are going to shape it. First thing you have to do when you're shaping is find common multiples. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Multiples of 3, 3, 6, 9, 12. 6 is our common multiple. So you're going to multiply 1/2 and 2/3 by a fraction. The fraction is equivalent to 1. And when you multiply those two fractions, you're going to get something, two more fractions, that has 6 in the denominator. Okay? 2 times what number equals 6? And of course that is 3. 2 times 3 equals 6. So you multiply the top by 3, so that's 3/3. You're multiplying 1/2 by 3/3, which is equal to 3/6. Now I'm going to multiply 3 by something that equals 6, and of course that is 2. Alright, so if you multiply the bottom by 2, multiply the top by 2, so you're basically multiplying this by 2 halves. 3 times 2 is 6, 2 times 2 is 4. Now that's step number 1, shape it. I've reshaped it. 3/6 plus 4/6. Alright, now the next step is to operate. 3 plus 4 is 7, and then 3/6 plus 4/6 is 7/6. So that's step number 2, operate. That's probably the easiest step. And then the last step is to simplify. So if you do top divided by bottom here, you're going to get 1 and 1/6. That is your answer. Alright, example problem number 2 is 5/6 minus 1/3. So let's go ahead and shape these because we know that we can't subtract them because they have different denominators. So to find our common denominator, write out some multiples. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Common or multiples of 6, 6, 12, 18, 24. And you quickly see that 6 is your least common multiple. Alright, so when we rewrite the problem, we're going to have 6 in the denominator because that is our least common multiple. Alright, so next step is to rename the fractions using a fraction equivalent to 1. So what do I multiply 6 by to get 6? Of course that's 1. So your fraction is 1 over 1. So you're going to get the exact same fraction in that situation, 5/6. Now this one's going to be a little bit of a different fraction. What am I going to multiply 1/3 by to get 6 in the denominator? What number times 3 equals 6? And of course that's 2. 3 times 2 is 6. And so we're going to multiply that by 2 halves because 2 halves is equal to 1. And it also gives us 6 in the denominator. 1 times 2 is 2. So subtract those two. 5/6 minus 2/6. 5 minus 2 is going to be 3/6. So we did our shape, which is rewriting it. And we just operated, which is 5/6 minus 2/6. And then our last one is to reduce. And we know that 3/6 reduces to 1/2. Alright, number 1 from your homework says, what is the difference between the sum of 1/2 and 1/2 and the product of 1/2 and 1/2? So we got to find the difference, which is a subtraction problem. And we're finding the difference between 1/2 plus 1/2, which we know 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1. And the product of 1/2 and 1/2. And product means multiply. So what's 1/2 times 1/2? Basically half of a half. So you're going to have 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. So you're going to find the difference between the sum of 1/2 and 1/2, which is 1, and 1/4. Difference means subtract. So you're taking 1/4 away from 1. Now, let's go ahead and rewrite this problem. 1 minus 1/4. Now, you can't take 1/4 away from nothing, and so we're going to borrow from the ones place, and that's going to become 4/4. Okay, the 1 is going to become 0. 4/4 minus 1/4 is 3/4. So your answer number 1 is 3/4. Alright, here's number 5 from your homework, 1/2 plus 1/6. Notice I rewrote it up and down. You guys need to write these up and down, not from left to right. Left to right until you get really good at them. Alright, so we're gonna rename. Okay, and we know that 6 is our common denominator. So 2 times what equals 6? And that, of course, is 3. So I'm going to multiply this by 3/3. 1/2 equals 3/6. Alright, now I'm going to rename this one. And for this one, I'm going to be multiplying it by 1/1, which is going to give us the exact same thing. So you got 3/6 plus 1/6 is going to be 4/6. And then when you reduce, 4/6 reduces to 2/3. That's your answer. Alright, here's an order of operations problem. If you want to write, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally to the side, PEMDAS, that will help. Square root of 4 is 2. But you're not supposed to do exponents first. So you're supposed to do parentheses first. So everything inside the parentheses should be done before you do anything outside the parentheses. 1 squared, which is 1 times 1 is 1. Subtract 2/10. Bring everything down. 1 minus 2/10, because I'm still in the parentheses, you have to evaluate everything inside the parentheses first. 1 minus 2/10 is 8/10. Bring down everything. Okay, square root of 4 is 2. Subtract 8/10. You take 2 and you subtract 8/10, you're going to get 1 and 2/10 left over. Alright, number 11 from your homework is 5 3/8 minus 2 5/8. Alright, so first thing you got to do is subtract in fraction land, so to speak. Alright, so 3/8 minus 5/8. You can't take 5/8 away from 3/8, so you got to borrow from the 5, which is in whole number land. And then you're going to add in a fraction that has an 8 on the bottom. I picked 8 on the bottom because that's our denominator, our common denominator, so we're going to pick 8. And a fraction that equals 1 that has 8 on the bottom is 8/8. Alright, so take 8/8 plus 3/8, and that is going to be 11/8. 11, now you can subtract 5 from 11. So 11 minus 5 is going to be 6/8. 4 minus 2 is going to be 2 6/8. And this reduces, 6/8 reduces to 3/4. And 2, and don't forget your whole number 2. So the answer is 2 and 3. Alright, for number 13, we're supposed to find the area of the shaded region. In order to do that, you find the area of the whole rectangle first. The whole rectangle, if you remember, the area of a rectangle is equal to whatever the length is times whatever the width is. So in this case, the length is 20. The width is 10. And so if you multiply the length times the width together, you're going to get the area, which in this case is going to be 200. Okay? Now, but we don't want the area of the whole rectangle. They only want the area of the shaded region, which is, as you can see, half of the whole rectangle. So in order to find the area of just the shaded region, you find the area of the whole region, which is 200, and you divide that by 2, because if you divide something by 2, that's finding half. Okay, so half of 200 is 100 millimeters squared. So your answer is 100 millimeters squared.